Remember the Brady Bunch? The scene that got it taken off the air will make you gasp? I grew up thinking the Brady Bunch was almost impossible to shake. The family always had another lesson, another problem, another happy ending. Then I found out what happened during the final episode. And honestly, the orange hair wasn't even the strangest part. Because the story fans have repeated for years isn't quite what it seems. And once you know what was happening behind that famous Brady living room, the final episode feels completely different. The strange thing about the Brady Bunch is that its biggest backstage conflict involves something that sounds almost laughable today. Hair. Bright orange hair. But stay with me, because this wasn't really about hair. It was about Robert Reed, the actor who played Mike Brady, and his growing frustration with the direction of the show. Reed was a serious, classically trained actor. He had a background in Shakespeare and apparently wanted the Brady family to feel a little more grounded. The show's creator, Sherwood Schwartz, had a different idea. He understood that audiences loved the silliness, and by the fifth season, that difference between the two men had become pretty difficult to ignore. I actually find that fascinating, because when we watch Mike Brady today, he seems like the calmest man in America. But behind the scenes, the actor playing him was becoming increasingly unhappy. And then came the episode that would become the show's accidental finale. It's called The Harebrained Scheme. The story sounds like something you'd invent as a joke. Bobby Brady gets involved with a hair tonic. He wants to make some extra money. He convinces his older brother Greg to try it. And then disaster. Greg's hair turns bright orange just before his high school graduation. That's the plot. But here's where things get weird. Robert Reed reportedly objected to the storyline because he didn't believe a hair tonic could realistically turn someone's hair orange overnight. And he wasn't willing to perform the episode as written. Think about that for a second. The man playing Mike Brady, the father at the center of this supposedly perfect family, wasn't even going to appear in the show's final episode. And that's exactly what happened. Mike Brady was missing. Near the end of the episode, Carol simply explains that Mike is out of town. That's it. No dramatic goodbye. No hint that this was the last time viewers would see the original series. Just, Dad is away. I remember reading that detail and thinking, wait, that's how it ended? But the real story gets even more interesting. According to the accounts in the source material, Reed was at the studio but refused to participate in the filming. Rather than stop production, the writers redistributed Mike's dialogue. Carol handled some of it. Alice handled some of it. And the episode moved forward. So while viewers were watching Greg panic over his ridiculous orange hair, something much more serious was happening behind the camera. The show's central father had effectively walked out of the episode, and nobody knew they were watching the ending. That's the part that gives the whole thing an almost accidental sadness. The cast wasn't filming a grand finale. They weren't saying goodbye. They were just making another episode. And then ABC didn't renew the series. But there's an important correction to the title of this story. The orange hair scene did not literally get the Brady Bunch taken off the air. That's a popular version of the story. But the evidence in the supplied script points to something much less dramatic. The show simply wasn't a major ratings powerhouse during its original network run. It lasted 5 seasons, and once enough episodes existed for syndication, the economics of reruns became important. And that's exactly what happened. The show ended in 1974. Then something almost unbelievable happened. It became even bigger. Reruns introduced the Brady family to new generations of viewers. A show that hadn't dominated the ratings during its original run slowly became a television institution. And suddenly, those little imperfections mattered. The missing toilet in the children's bathroom, the strange continuity mistakes, the changing hairstyles, the awkward moments. Even the ridiculous orange hair, they became part of the mythology. But there was another side to the Brady story that I think makes this ending more meaningful. The actors weren't their characters. We know that now. Behind the clean family image were young performers dealing with very real pressures. Barry Williams, who played Greg, later acknowledged experimenting with marijuana as a teenager and even showing up for a reshoot while still affected by it. Christopher Knight struggled with musical performances because singing wasn't his strength. Maureen McCormick, who played Marcia, later spoke openly about anxiety, insecurity, and substance abuse after the show ended. And Robert Reed was dealing with struggles of his own. He was gay at a time when Hollywood was far less accepting, and he kept that part of his life private because of the professional consequences he feared. Florence Henderson later reflected on how difficult that must have been for him. So when I look at that final Brady episode now, I don't just see a silly story about orange hair. I see the end of a complicated period. 5 seasons of television, 6 young actors growing up in front of America, adults trying to control the direction of a hit show, and one actor who no longer wanted to pretend that every ridiculous storyline made sense. That's why the final episode feels so strange. Greg is worried about graduation. The family is trying to solve a hair disaster, and Mike Brady is nowhere to be seen. Then the credits roll.